Vidya ya Vimukta, that is knowledge which liberates. Namaskar, good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Bharat Bodh Kendra, Habitat Library and Research Center, India Habitat Center, and ICPR, we extend a heartfelt welcome to everyone present here for this inaugural session of the IHC ICPR Study Circle Lecture Series. This is one of the many initiatives taken by our Honorable Director, Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, to create meaningful conversations around India's knowledge systems, culture, and heritage. Today, we begin a new journey of dialogue and reflections on India's rich philosophical and intellectual traditions. Your presence truly honors this occasion. To begin today's program, may I kindly request our dignitaries to come forward for the lighting of the ceremonial lamp symbolizing knowledge and wisdom. Professor Sachchidanand Mishra, Member Secretary ICPR. Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, Director IHC. Professor Bindu Puri, Center for Philosophy, Jawaharlal Nehru University. May this slide guide today's discussion with clarity and purpose. We now request our dignitaries to please come on dais. We now request our Director IHC to present mementos to the dignitaries. I now request Ms. Abhilasha to kindly take the proceedings forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to all present. I extend a warm welcome to this august gathering on the occasion of the inaugural lecture of the IHC ICPR Study Circle. This study circle is envisioned as a sustained intellectual engagement that will unfold over the coming year, and we are delighted to commence this journey today. It is my privilege to formally introduce the distinguished dignitaries who have graced this inaugural occasion with their presence. We are honored to have with us the convener of this study circle, Professor K.G. Suresh, whose efforts have ensured the smooth organization and coherence of the series we are commencing today. Professor Suresh is a distinguished journalist, academician, institution builder, and an influential voice in media education and public communication. He currently serves as the director of the India Habitat Center, New Delhi, one of the country's foremost intellectual and cultural institutions. Professor Suresh has played a pivotal role in strengthening media education in India, particularly through his role in introducing journalism programs in Indian languages. He has worked as chief political correspondent with the Press Trust of India, followed by key editorial and consulting assignments with prominent media organizations such as Doordarshan News and the Asianet News Network. In his transition to academia and institutional leadership, Professor Suresh served as Director General of the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Delhi, and the founder Dean of the School of Modern Media at the University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, Dehradun. Later, he was appointed Vice-Chancellor of the Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Communication, Bhopal. He is also the founder-president of the Global Media Education Council and the vice-president of the Indian Communication Congress. Professor Suresh has been the recipient of numerous prestigious honors, including the Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi Puraskar in the year 2020, awarded by the Kendriya Hindi Sansthan, Ministry of Education, for his outstanding contribution to journalism. He has also received the PRSI Leadership Award in the year 2017 for excellence in public relations. We are honored to have him with us today. With great pleasure, I now invite Professor K.G. Suresh to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Abhilasha. Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Sachchidanand Mishra ji, the convener of this program, Professor Bindu Puri ji, and dear friends. I know that many of you have come here to listen to Professor Shrinivasa Varakhedi. And unfortunately, in fact, we were grappling with it. A development had taken place. His father suffered a heart attack just a couple of hours back, and he had to rush. We had no option, but we thought that since all of you were informed much in advance, and we had a very eminent chief guest who is the Member Secretary of the Indian Council for Philosophical Research. We thought that, we requested him that being a chief guest and keynote speaker, today you will have to combine that role together. And I'm really thankful to him, grateful to him that he very graciously accepted our request. We in any case were planning a standalone lecture by him in the coming days, but he graciously accepted. So we decided that since this was the first program of the IHC ICPR collaboration, we thought that cancelling it at the last moment did not really make any sense. And because of the presence of a giant in the discipline like Professor Sachchidanand Mishra, we thought that we should continue with it. So my apologies for not having, Professor Varakhedi. I can assure you that very soon in the series we will have him back. We wish his father a speedy recovery. Friends, very briefly, because my job is today to welcome. We set up almost 6 months back the Bharat Bodh Kendra. The whole idea was that in a way to create awareness about our rich heritage, our civilization, our culture. And the Bharat Bodh Kendra, apart from being, as most of you members are aware, being a very significant aspect of our library, where you have books on Indian culture, traditions, and philosophy. This would also be a kind of outreach with regard to Indian civilization, culture, traditions, language. So wherein one of the first things apart from setting up the library was that we only used to have English books. Now we will be having a curated collection of Sahitya Academy books in all Indian languages. So that will be the new addition in the library. The Delhi Documenta, an exclusive dedicated section which would be talking about Delhi, because we are Delhiites and we don't have any place where we can get every information about our capital, its culture, its history, its architecture. So we thought there should be a dedicated segment for that. We have already have a pilot one in place, but this Delhi Documenta would have books right from, chronicling our history from Indraprastha to the Central Vista. That is the whole idea. That's coming up. The third thing we started under BBK was the Sanlapa series. Sanlap in Sanskrit means dialogue. The whole idea is that let us go deep into certain subjects with which we are acquainted with, but we do not know much. For example, we all watch Kathak dance, we all watch Odissi, Bharatnatyam, but we are not, unless we are an expert in that domain, the common people are not very much into its therapeutics, its aesthetics. So we thought that there should be a discussion that it's not enough to watch a dance, but it's also important to understand that dance. Since I come from a family of artists, I thought this is very important. Because we always, we have two categories of people. The sadhakas, those who are the performers, and the rasikas. Both of them are incomplete without each other. The audience is as important. So an enlightened, informed audience is also very important. So that is why this focus on grooming the rasikas. Because only if you are able to comprehend the deeper nuances would you be able to appreciate. Like watching a film and appreciating a film, both are different. So in that series we started Sanlap. The third is the IHC Connect, through which we are going to talk about a lot of issues which are of contemporary relevance, but which we do not figure in conversations. For example, recently we had a roundtable on the role of media in constructive dialogue. We always look at media with a lot of critiquing, it's negative, it's sensationalist. but what role can media play in because our job is not just to criticize, but to find a way out, So we are looking not at the problems, but at the solutions. And so IHC Connect was conceived. We had workshops on Natya Shastra and other things. And this apart, we are getting into collaborations. And that is where this collaboration also comes. One of the first collaborations was with Prayas. I'm sure some of you have attended those sessions. The Prayas collaboration has enabled us to talk about urban habitat issues, slum dwellers, the street children. These are issues which we need to talk about. So, because we are a habitat institution, we are a think tank on habitat issues. So, with Prayas, we got into a collaboration, and we have already had 3 programs. Heal Foundation, we got into discussing health-related issues, and 3 camps, medical camps for our members, and apart from that, 3 workshops on very important issues like concepts like blue zones, where people live for more than 100 years, how we can achieve it, at least move towards it. So these are the ideas that are being discussed. That was, then the third, very soon we will be giving you the details. We have got into an MOU with the National Stock Exchange because financial literacy is very important. So particularly for our members who bring in experience from different walks of life, we thought that financial literacy, so we are going to talk about it. A lot of workshops are planned. Then we thought that it is important that we get into a collaboration on understanding philosophy. Now that's a little complicated for the layman. How to break it down, deconstruct it for the common man. And that is when Professor Bindu Puri one day, a very long time friend of mine, she just walked into my office one day and said that, Professor, can we think of some kind of a collaboration? I said, certainly yes, but I don't have an expertise in that. I'm a student of mass communication. I have administrative experience, but philosophy, well, not my cup of tea. You will have to help me in that. And then I would give her full credit that though Professor Sachchidanand ji is a good friend, but I must say that she played a very pivotal role in bringing out this agreement between IHC and ICPR, where ICPR is looking after the content, we are looking after the facilitation, and we are confident that the different shades, initially it is for 1 year, but I'm sure that with the mentorship of Professor Mishra, I'm sure this is going to be extended year after year, and we are going to have different aspects of Indian philosophy which would be discussed on this platform. And we started with Professor Shrinivasa Varakhedi, but he could not make it. But we were planning in the coming months a standalone session with him, Professor Mishra, and I'm grateful to him for accepting that. So here we are today. But I must say, as I was talking about the sadhakas and the rasikas, nothing would be possible without your support. We can only make efforts, but your effort, your support in coming all the way on a polluted day and in the evening, to come here to patronize this conference, this series, that's very important. We look forward to your continued support. I would be failing in my duty if I don't mention my team led by Professor Geeta Bala and Sangeeta ji. If they had not been there, maybe this would not have seen the light of the day. They really worked hard. My entire team is there at the Habitat Library and Research Center. We have renamed the Resource Center as the Research Center with a focus on research. So HLRC team, full marks to them. And thank you once again. We look forward to your continued patronage. Thank you so much. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir. We are equally fortunate to be joined by the co-convenor of this study circle, Professor Bindu Puri, whose dedication and academic insight have been instrumental in bringing this initiative to fruition. Professor Puri is an eminent scholar of modern and contemporary Indian philosophy, as well as moral and political philosophy. Currently, She teaches at the Center for Philosophy, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Puri has published over 60 research papers in edited volumes and leading philosophical and interdisciplinary journals. She has written 4 major monographs, the most recent being Rabindranath Tagore, Peace in an Enchanted World. She has also co-authored with Professor Mrinal Miri, Gandhi for the 21st Century, Religion, Morality and Politics, and has edited 9 books. Notably, her edited volume Reading Sri Aurobindo, Metaphysics, Ethics and Spirituality was translated into German in the year 2024. Her most recent co-edited book with Professor Sachchidanand Mishra is Indian Nationalism, a Reader. Professor Puri is also the general editor of the Springer Nature book series Indian Philosophy, Past and Present. An experienced academic administrator, Professor Puri has chaired the departments of philosophy at both Delhi University and JNU and has been a chairperson of the governing body of Aditi Mahavidyalaya, University of Delhi. She has been a member of the academic committee of the Army Cadet College at Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, and currently serves on the academic committee of the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie. Professor Puri is a member of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research and serves on its governing body. She has delivered several prestigious international lectures, including the M.K. Gandhi Lecture on Peace and the Humanities in the year 2017 for the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Council, Ottawa, and the Sugden Oration at Queen's College, University of Melbourne in the year 2023. I warmly invite Professor Bindu Puri to introduce the study circle and its year-long vision. Professor Puri will speak on An Enchanted Universe, relationship between the human and the non-human universe in Indian philosophy, and introduction to the theme.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody for being here for the launch of our series. It's a great honor and privilege for me to speak about this series here. And actually, the India Habitat Center is the most appropriate space for reflections on the relationship between the human and the non-human world in Indian philosophy. But it is also a most appropriate time in the intellectual history of our great country for making these inquiries, because we are at a very interesting point in the history of ideas in India. We are poised between notions of progress, moving towards an ideal point, which we have defined, as Viksit Bharat, and we are also trying to come out of colonial stereotypes to arrive at what K.C. Bhattacharya famously wrote in 1926, I think, was as a Swaraj in Ideas, which was aimed at reviving the old world mind of India, which he thought has lapsed under the pressure of ideas coming from the West. And as he famously told us, there's nothing wrong in assimilation, but are we assimilating or are we being subjected? So consider for a moment, why am I saying that the habitat is really the right place for us to go back to ask the question, what is the relationship between the human and the non-human world in Indian philosophy? Well, the habitat is built on different kinds of synergies between professions and institutions, which, as Professor K.G. Suresh just defined, interact to resolve habitat-related issues between nature and the human world itself. And we see this in the architecture. Look at the eco-friendly terraces and spaces in which it has been laid out. So it's a kind of enchanted space which is conceived around these objectives. And when you consider the climate problems in our world and the way the center is conceived as working in diverse habitat-related areas, we can appreciate the significance of what an alternative conception of the relationship between the human and the non-human world in Indian philosophy, what kind of impact this could play in promoting the objectives of this center. So this has taken us to philosophy and to looking at this unique conception in Indian philosophy. And I would really be out of order if I did not record here the role of the leadership that has made this series possible. to kind of come within the mandate of this wonderful institution. And this leadership comes in the person of the leading scholar and journalist, Professor K.G. Suresh, who has deep ties with India's intellectual past and who has been a part of the ideational Swaraj through his writing and academic leadership, which he now brings to the center. And indeed, as he has become the director, the Bharat Bodh Kendra has been integrated with the library and research center to become a specialized space designed to deepen public understanding of India's civilizational legacy. So that's under the auspices of that we are trying to look at this theme. And I have to mention in this context another great leader of the contemporary movement for an ideational Swaraj in India, and one who has done a lot to open a space for Indian philosophy in universities and colleges all over the country. And I refer here to Professor Sachchidanand Mishra ji, who has indeed done enormous task and has made significant contributions to understanding of Indian knowledge tradition. So a word now about the specific theme, the relationship between the human and non-human world in Indian philosophy. To begin with, you may say, why do we even need to look at Indian philosophy? After all, a lot of environmental ethics has been done over the world, and post the pandemic, you have a lot of spending on environmental ethics. But I'd like to just give you one obvious insight, and that is that even as late as 2025, environmental ethics as a discipline remains very dominated by the universal unitary epistemology of Western modernity, which is based on the idea that outside all these, cultures, there is a culture-free standpoint. And to this standpoint, which is representing the common core of human consciousness, the West has a privileged access. So this argument has so dominated positions, theories in environmental ethics as a discipline. So this not only leaves out the undeniable diversity of perspectives on how we should live out this relationship all over the world, but also the great philosophical diversity in India as we look at this. So besides differences in ages, schools, worldviews, in India you find that the truth of life is connected with the special circumstances of the habitat and its surroundings in a very effortless way. From its classical past through the age of the systems in the more modern form, Indian philosophy has attempted to articulate this relationship. So you see, you have dualism of the Sankhya, but you also have a lot of stress on the principle of unity. And you find the Upanishads speaking about, how that the whole moving world is enveloped by God, and you have to find enjoyment through renunciation, not greed of possession. Now, what does this mean? This basically tries to say that when you look at the multiplicity of things as the final truth, you try to gain possession of them. But when you find the infinite soul, or you look at it in the light of, let's say, some kind of union or oneness, then you respect the non-human world. And it is such a respect that and more than that, the non-human world has entered into a close relationship with ancient Indians living out their daily necessities and their lives of contemplation in a way that you could not imagine, as the non-human world being separate or inimical. In this view of the world which India has taken is summed up in this Sanskrit word, Sachchidanand. The meaning is that reality, which is essentially one, has three phases. And just look at how we break up this world. The first part is Sat, and it is a simple fact that things are one, the fact which relates an individual human to all things through the relationship of common existence. The second word, Chit, is the fact that we know, and that relates us to everything in the non-human universe through a relationship of knowledge. And the third, which is very important, is Ananda. And it is that we enjoy, which relates us to the non-human universe through the relationship of love. So this sentiment is not restricted to high academic philosophy in India. You find it in literature. So in Kalidas, for example, if you look at Shakuntala, there is a contrast between the heartlessness of the king's court and the purity of the ashram, based on the same idea. I think Meghdut also, there's the idea of nature making the bridge between separated hearts. So if I put it very, very simplistically, in the Indian philosophical perspective on this relationship, there are 4 elements. One is that nature and the human world are not separate. Secondly, the non-human world is autonomous. It's not meant to serve human needs and greed. Thirdly, very interestingly, the human being can draw comfort and be in a kind of relationship with the non-human universe. And fourthly, the human being has an immense debt to pay back to this non-human world. So this set of ideas is reflected in, like I said, literature, philosophy, the age of the systems. But it's very different, the literature in India, from the literature of the corresponding period in the West. And I'm just going to draw from Tagore's point, where Tagore says that if you look at the tragic intensity of Hamlet and Othello, you'll find it's unrelieved by any touch of nature's intensity. So, for example, in Macbeth, as a prelude to the crime of treachery and treason, there's a scene of the barren heath, where 3 witches appear as personifications of nature's malignant forces. This is not meant to anyways say that Shakespeare was not a great writer or poet, but simply to say that there is that he's expressing a certain view towards nature which is very different from the Indian tradition. And there's a difference in later poets like Wordsworth and Shelley, but we don't find that notion of love, right? So the syncretic Indian civilization has its own conception of the relationship between the human and non-human world. And you see how India counts as pilgrimage, all places which display a special beauty or splendor of nature, like sacred rivers, the Himalayas, and so on. And I will again go to Tagore, the poet, the play Autumn Festival or Rinshod, which was actually Sharad Utsav when it was written. And here the whole idea of paying back your debt, that nature shows human beings how to enter the eternal rhythm of payment and enjoyment. And a dominant theme in this play is the role of nature in inspiring the human being to so own up. And Tagore writes, the Betasini river is what it is because it keeps nothing back. And there's also the idea here that nature invites you to celebrate its festivals, like autumn, spring, and so on, but with a sudden invitation. What does all this mean? That there is a certain responsibility that human beings have to see the non-human world as autonomous, not just for human need and greed. And this is the same idea that we find in the Upanishads, we find strengthened in the philosophies of the tribes of India. And this is the idea that the entire world is permeated by an intangible presence with which it is possible to communicate or to be in touch. So this lecture series at the India Habitat Center will attempt to unpack the manner in which the Indian tradition, despite its great rich diversity, poses an alternative to the anthropocentrism, man-centeredness of Enlightenment modernity. Different lectures in the series will explore India's unique position on the relationship between the human and the non-human world. And I'll say it's valuable because of the powerful message it gives to humanity, one which I have argued elsewhere in different places, is that of the forest civilization of India, which could show humanity that relationships need not always be guided by utility or expediency. They could be devoid of purpose and about joy. I'll go back again to Tagore when he says that we can learn from the person who receives water on his mind and body with reverence rather than from a sense of utility. So I'm going to just leave you with that thought from Tagore. My reverence goes out to the man who, when taking an emergence, can receive the water upon his body and upon his mind as well, in a devout spirit. For him, the grimy touch of habit has not been able to tarnish the everlasting mystery which is in fire and earth, water and food. So with this thought, I welcome you to this IHC ICPR Study Circle lecture series, and also would now like to hear from our chief speaker, who's going to enlighten us with his wonderful words. So Abhilasha.
Thank you for introducing the theme of the study circle so beautifully, ma'am. Moving on, we are deeply honored to have with us the speaker for today, Professor Sachchidanand Mishra, the Member Secretary of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, New Delhi. Professor Mishra is an eminent scholar of Indian philosophy and a distinguished Sanskritist. His area of specialization covers a broad and rich spectrum of Indian philosophical traditions: Navya Nyaya, Advait Vedant, Shuddha Advait Vedant, Kashmir Shaiv philosophy, and Indian aesthetics. He has authored more than 11 books, with the most recent being Nyaya Darshanam, over 40 research papers in leading national and international journals, and has also contributed chapters to edited volumes. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to Sanskrit scholarship, Professor Mishra was awarded the Maharishi Badrayan Vyas Samman in the year 2009. Since 2021, as Member Secretary of the ICPR, Professor Mishra plays a central role in shaping the intellectual and institutional agenda of the Council. Under his leadership, ICPR continues to promote research in philosophical and traditional Indian knowledge systems, fund academic projects, and encourage scholarly collaboration across India and abroad. It is a great honor to welcome our esteemed speaker, Professor Sachchidanand Mishra, to give the inaugural lecture of the IHC ICPR lecture series.
Namaha Sabhavyaha. Honorable Professor K.G. Suresh ji, the convener of this series, Professor Bindu Puri ji, Professor Medal Miri ji, Sujata Miri ji, and many scholars, students from different universities, different colleges. Till 4:30, I was not aware of the situation that I would have to deliver a talk here in this study circle program. I had been very confident that I am going to listen a very beautiful talk given by Professor Shrinivasa Varakhedi ji. And you say, unfortunately, you have to listen to me on this topic without any preparation. So, this is also for me a little bit of challenge. You can see that suppose one is going to his home thinking that he is going to have a good dinner, and unfortunately when he reaches home, he finds that he would have to cook the dinner to eat that. So this is the situation now I am feeling. So I hope, and I also request you, that if I could not do justice to the topic, please pardon me. The topic which was chosen here by Professor Varakhedi ji is very relevant, very important. The text and context, some reflections. Because there are, this is aided some reflections. Therefore, I can also give some reflections on this topic. So, text and context. This topic is chosen because in order to understand India and Indian tradition, one has to understand the text very clearly, without any defect, without any deviation. Because let us explore the idea from the Western side. The great philosopher of 20th century, Derrida, whose work is based on deconstruction.
And as according to Derrida's deconstruction, he emphasizes that meaning is not fixed. Meaning of a text is not fixed, but rather it is dependent on the interplay between text and its context. That means a text can have different meanings. And if there is a possibility of different meanings, then you can understand Mahabharata, you can understand Ramayana, you can understand Vedas in different ways. And nowadays you can see, you can find out so many such examples where these texts are understood different ways. And let me give you one example how this understanding, this claim of Derrida is appropriate. In Indian philosophical tradition also we have different interpretations. We have different interpretations of Vedas. We have different interpretation of Upanishads. But whenever you are interpreting Vedas or you are interpreting Upanishads, this is a necessity that you must follow certain rules. Without following those rules, you cannot understand the true important. True understanding of those texts is dependent upon those roots, those rules, which are clearly provided. When you say that Nyaya is a Vedic philosophy, and you are also saying Vedanta is also a Vedic philosophy, both are following the Vedas, but they do not follow in the same sense Vedas. Because if this were the case, if this were the situation, both philosophies should not be contrary to each other. And you can know very clearly, and we all the students of Indian philosophy are very much aware of the fact that Nyaya philosophy is a dualist philosophy, and contrary to it, Advaita philosophy is a non-dualist philosophy. And if both are depending upon the Vedas, how their understandings could differ? And not only this, there are so many more examples. You can find out more than 10 schools which claim that these are Vedantic philosophers. These are Vedantic schools, and their philosophies differ. So what Derrida was claiming in 20th century, it was well established here long before. But the Indian tradition was very much aware of this situation. Therefore, they have invented some rules to understand the text, to interpret the text. And I think when we are willing to understand this topic, this is a very much necessity to understand what are those rules and how we can understand the text given certain context, and how context is playing a role in understanding the text. So without taking the context, therefore in Dvaita Madhva's tradition, there is a Madhva's tradition. Madhvacharya wrote so many texts like Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, Gita Tatparya Nirnaya, Bhagavata Tatparya Nirnaya. That means he is very well aware of the situation that there is a possibility to understand these texts differently. And he is presenting those arguments how to understand them properly. And being a student of Navya Nyaya, the Navya Nyayikas invented a separate type of language where there is no possibility of misunderstanding. Even if a student tries to understand the text differently, he he cannot do that. Because the language is so coined, so invented, that if you are trying to understand, in that situation also you feel helpless to understand it differently. So this style developed there to write a text in such a way that nobody is able to understand them differently. That means now the text becomes completely independent of context. So this is the Indian tradition where text and context are playing some role differently and they are related to each other. And also there is a development which invented a language in such a way that there is no place left for misconception. Therefore, Navya Nyaya became the language of philosophy. Many Nyaya texts were written, many Mimamsa texts were written, many grammarian texts were written following the Nyaya terminology, Nyaya language, Navya Nyaya language. Even Sahitya texts, Alankara Shastra, aesthetics, those texts were also written following the Navya Nyaya terminology of Navya Nyaya text. So that is a development of this issue and how we think on this issue to offer one solution to the problem. And let us understand how these texts are understood differently and what the text says regarding this. In Sahitya Darpan, because this idea, it is actually this text and interpretation or text and context, this idea is very much related to textual criticism or literary criticism. Therefore, the discussion and explanation is found in Sahitya Darpan, Kavya Prakash, etc. Those texts which are related to Alankara Shastra. And here in Sahitya Darpan there is a shloka. Vaktri buddhavya vakkyanam anya sannidhi vachyayoho prastava deshakalanam kakos cheshtadikasya cha vaishishtya danyamartham ya bodhayet sartha sambhava. So the discussion comes when the author of Sahitya Darpan, Vishwanath Kaviraj, is explaining Arthi Vyanjana, the suggested meaning. So here in Indian tradition, it is very well explained and the distinction is made between these three types of meanings. One meaning which is known as Abhidheyartha, the direct meaning. Secondly, which you can say indirect meaning, that is Lakshyartha. And third one is suggested meaning. So there are three kinds of meanings: direct meaning, another one is indirect meaning, and third one is suggested meaning. Abhidheyartha, Lakshyartha and Vyangyartha. So these three types of meaning, because when you are not taking these three meanings differently and you are not making a distinction, whole is becoming messed. For example, when you say a person, the person is an ox. In Hindi, if it is said, ye aadmi bail hai. So when you are saying that this person is an ox or an ass, in that sentence, one is a direct meaning and another one is a suggested meaning. What you are willing to suggest? That the person is fool enough to be called an ass or an ox. So this meaning is coming from this suggested part of meaning. And there is also lakshyarth. Sometimes we use these type of sentences when I say kala riksha, and we all state in this way. But call a rickshaw doesn't mean calling a rickshaw, because even if you try to call a rickshaw, you cannot call a rickshaw. Rickshaw is not an animate being which can be called. So whenever you are telling and you are using this sentence, call a rickshaw, everybody is understanding that what you meant. And accordingly, the person calls the rickshaw puller. So, call a rickshaw means calling a rickshaw puller, and everybody understands without any difficulty. So, due to these issues, there are, because one is abhidhayartha, second is lakshyartha, and third one is bengyartha. And actually, these three play very important role. Anandavardhan, the great aesthetician, when writes Dhvanyaloka, he says clearly, Kabyasyatma dhvaniriti budhaiya samabnata purva. So this is the essence of a poetry. What is the essence of poetry? The essence of poetry is dhvani. That is to say, suggested meaning. If you are conveying the direct meaning, it is not a poetry. Poetry ceases to be poetry if it is directly conveying. The good poetry, beautiful poetry, is that poetry which is not saying in direct way, but in direct way suggesting something. When you say, you are a moon. So when you are saying you are a moon, and when you are saying you are beautiful, these two sentences actually conveying the same thing, but their effect is different. When you are saying you are beautiful, you are talking directly. It is not a poetry. But when you are saying you are a moon, you are a piece of moon, it becomes a kind of poetry, because you are saying that in direct way or in a suggested way. So the literary work is always dependent upon this type of suggested meanings. Therefore, in literary works, there is a possibility of a scope to understand what you are understanding. And we play with language. The poet uses a word which is suitable in that situation and which is able to convey different meanings. And you can examine that the poets play with words. Because if they are not playing with words, it is not becoming a poetry. So the poetry, and here also this idea, when you are talking about text and context, this idea is so vast, because what do you understand by the term text? Whether it is a word or it is a collection of words. Text is not a word, but it is a collection of words. So how you understand the meaning of a sentence? So here there are different theories in Indian tradition. How we understand a meaning of a sentence, the meaning of a sentence. And here, what is the process? Understanding the meanings of words, and then understanding the meaning of the sentence, and whether the meaning of words and the meaning of sentence are identical or different. This is also a debatable point. Whether the sentence and the words are different or identical, this is also a debatable point. But leaving a few these points aside, simply we can say that when we are talking about a text, we are talking about the sentential meaning. What will be the case of Ramayana, Mahabharata, or a novel? It is said that these are actually Mahavakyas, a big sentence. Why it is called Ramayana? Because beginning from the first sloka and reaching at the last sloka, there is a connection. When you are reading a novel, beginning from the first sentence and reaching at the last sentence, there is a connection. And that connection is there in a sentence, and all these sentences are connected with each other. So, when you are trying to understand the meaning of that big sentence, to say Mahavakyartha, you first have to understand the meaning of all those sentences. So, sentential meaning, how can be understood without any difficulty, without any confusion? This is one challenge. And later on, there is another challenge, how to understand the meaning of the whole text. So, when we are trying to understand the meaning of one sentence, there are certain other rules. And when we are trying to understand the meaning of the whole text, Mahavakyartha, there are certain other rules. And if we follow, this is the statement to say, this is the contention, that if we follow those rules, we can understand the meaning of those sentences. And without understanding, if we are trying to do, there will be actually different types of narratives. And if you are not taking those sentences, let me take one share in Urdu. Just take one part and leave second part, and thereafter try to understand the whole these two lines together, the meaning of these two lines. Zahid sharab peene de masjid mein baith kar. And if you are trying to understand the meaning of this sentence, it appears that the poet is trying to convey that drink sitting in a mosque. But when you read the second sentence, the meaning gets completely changed. या वो जगह बता दे जहाँ पर खुदा न हो. So he is not trying to convey, he is not trying to convince you to drink sitting in the mosque. Rather, he is trying to convey that there is no place which is not pure. And if you are drinking it anywhere, actually you are drinking sitting in a mosque. So this way you can see how meaning is explored. So when you are taking one sentence in isolation, it might convey something differently. But when you are taking them together, they will convey something differently. And when we are engaging in cultural dialogues, when we are trying to understand our culture, this is the very big challenge, very big point to understand our text and our tradition. Because when we are not understanding them in complete way, if we are trying to understand them in isolations, we can have different meanings, different interpretation, and that is happening nowadays. So we have to contextualize the whole text and thereafter try to understand its meaning. And there are certain rules. For example, there are rules to understand the meaning of a word, because you can see the big sentence, the big structure of sentences, like a novel, like a Mahakavya, all these are actually collection of sentences. So in order to understand the collection of sentences, there are certain rules, different rules. I will come to that point a little bit later. And what is a sentence? Sentence is called Pada Samuha Vakyam, a collection of pada. I am not translating this word pada. Sometimes we can say that pada is shabda or word, but actually they are something different. Pada is that which is capable of conveying some meaning. Shaktam padam, which has power to convey a meaning. For example, if a word is there which is meaningless, because it is not a contradiction to say meaningless word. There are so many words which are meaningless, but there are no meaningless padas, because it will be contradiction to say meaningless padas. Because pad, only that could be a pada which is meaningful. So we can say that a collection of meaningful words is called a sentence. So meaningful words, how different words can convey, and there is also a point of confusion, possibility of confusion. When I say Rama Krishna, when I say Ram Raman, when I say Ram Raman, which Ram is understood? Because in tradition there are three Ramas. One is Parashurama, another is Rama, the son of Dasharath, and third one is Balaram. And both these three are known by the word Rama. But when I say Rama Raman, only the son of Dasharath is understood. So when you are, and here you can see that it is actually context. When, in which situation a word conveys, word used, and it conveys the meaning. So there are different certain rules. Sanyogaha, viprayogascha, in conjunction of another word, in disjunction of another word. Sahacharya, I have given this example, and I am not going to in details because the time will not permit to go in that detail. Because the purpose of this study circle program is actually to ignite curiosity, to engage in a kind of dialogue so that people could inquire and could question. Because this is the essence of philosophy, questioning, and this study circle program is organized in that way that people should be curious and there should be some questions, and thereafter they can find out the answer to those questions. So, and here also another word if there. For example, let me take another word, Hari. In Sanskrit, Hari word has so many meanings. Hari means snake, Hari means lion, Hari means monkey, Hari means Lord Vishnu. But when you are saying Sashankha Chakro Harihi, Hari with Shankha and Chakra, you clearly understand that we are not talking about monkeys, we are not talking about snakes, rather we are talking about Lord Vishnu. So these are samarthyam. There is a samarthya. And this samarthya is also conveying the power of that word. And auchitya, what is useful in that context? Time, when you are talking about time, and also kala, Desh, in which place it is said. So these all are making some distinction, some understanding, difference. Even a sentence conveys different meaning if the speaker is having a different kind of tone. In a different tone, you are uttering a sentence, it conveys different meaning. For example, when you say, "Are you going?" And here, in that situation, it means, I don't believe that you are going in that situation. So, and are you going when simply you are asking? You are simply asking the question. But if tone is changed, it conveys something different. So there are different ways to understand the meaning of words, and those are governed by certain rules. And in order to understand the proper understanding of a text, that is the primary thing to be very much sure about. Secondly, in Vedantic schools, in philosophical text, it is said that there are 6 stages, 6 conditions, and those 6 conditions decide the meaning of a complete text. That is very well known by the philosophy students and who have studied Vedanta. Upakramopasanghara vabhyasota purvata phalam arthavadopapatti cha lingam tatparya nirnay. So, upakram and upasanghara, where it is beginning and where it is ending. You can see, Gita is a very popular text. And on Gita, there are more than 100 commentaries. And one philosopher says, and that is also a great philosopher, who says that Gita conveys, Gita is moksha shastra. And its meaning, it conveys the meaning how to attain the moksha. Second is there, that Gita is there to fight, karma yoga. Another interpretation is there, Gita is for bhakti. And there are some other variations also. So there are so many commentaries on those texts, this text, only 700 shlokas are there, and different interpretations are available. So these two, and the beauty is that these rules applied by all them. That means when you are trying to interpret a text, you are free to do it, but just follow the rules. And this is the beauty, that here there are so many commentaries, so many interpretations, and they are all following these rules. That means when you are saying that text is free from any understanding, any such idea, rather it should be understood separately, without any thing between the text and the reader. But one thing must be kept into consideration, that when we are trying to understand the text, we should follow those certain rules. And if we are not following, there is a possibility, always there is a possibility, that we will be misconceived, we will understand differently, and that is completely baseless. This is to say, we can say that there are baseless interpretations, and there are some interpretations which are based on some rules. So the Indian tradition always welcomes interpretations, but those interpretations should be based on these rules. And if these rules are not followed, this cannot be done. And therefore, the Mimamsakas are having one type of Vedic interpretation. Vedantins are having a different type of interpretation. And I think it is amazing to note, as many types of interpretations are available of Vedic text, Upanishadic text, you cannot find any text which is open to such type of interpretations in other world. So, with only these words, I would like to conclude my talk. I think I have not taken much time, but surely I am confident that some questions might come in your mind and my talk will be sufficient and successful in that way. Thank you.
Thank you for the insightful lecture, sir. We're incredibly grateful for your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Professor Mishra. That was indeed a very enlightening. I'm sure that after today, particularly for the newly initiated, not for the students who are already into philosophy, I think we are going to look at our text from a totally different perspective after this session. And I'm sorry to say that over the years, many of the texts have been misinterpreted because they have been read or tried to be read by people who have no idea about the rules. I can only say that one of these days, I would be really delighted to host Professor Mishra for a talk on the Manusmriti. And I think that that is perhaps one of the most misunderstood texts, which I think needs to be talked about. So on that note, I hand it over to Professor Bindu Puri to moderate the session. And the floor is now open for questions. I'm sure he has triggered a lot of questions in our minds, and he would be able to satisfy you with his answers. I'm confident. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Suresh, for being here. And I think your being here has really meant a lot to this inaugural, since he's the convener. So can I ask everybody if anyone has any questions? Yeah. You have a question? Yeah. Answer, please. First, he's there? He's already asking one, I think. Then you.
Professor Mishra ji, you told that here, the interpretation, Indian text have many interpretations. Nowhere in the world other text has. If it has many interpretations, the layman who reads it, like I am not a scholar, if I read it, which interpretation I should take, or read all and get confused? This is what I want, because you said rules and regulations are meant before interpreting. And then also so many interpretations are there. Then reader should follow which one?
That which interpretation should a layman follow? I think this is the beauty, that we have different interpretations. And because there are different interpretations, we have to inquire why there are these different interpretations. Because, and one answer is given, Ruchi Nam Vaichitryat. Because, one example I have given of Gita, why there are different interpretations? Because certain persons are inclined to follow the path of action. Certain persons are of this opinion that they should follow the path of renunciation. So, as their interest, they are free to choose the interpretation. And this is the beauty of our text, that we are not having one interpretation only, and it is opened. Yes.
Can you give him the mic, please?
Yeah.
in Indian philosophical traditions, there are three kinds of ideas. I'm talking about the philosophy. One is existence of God or belief in God. Another is agnosticism, means you are neutral about it. And the third is total rejection of any creator or God. Like I quote that famous creation hymn in Rig Veda, which rejects there is any creator or God. How do you reconcile these three ideas in Indian philosophy, three strands? One is belief in creator or God, another is agnostic like Buddha or other philosopher, and third is complete rejection, and that I am quoting this from Rig Veda, which is famous, very famous creation hymn. So I would like you to reconcile the three ideas.
This is also indeed a good question, and I would like to submit that in Indian philosophical tradition, God never had been in the center of discourse. Between these two traditions only, Nyaya and Buddhist, God had been the point of controversy. But there are so many Vedic texts, Vedic philosophies, which do not believe in the existence of God. And also, you can note this point that even the Advaita philosophers proposed so many arguments to reject the creator God theory, because they are saying that it is not tenable at all. So they are also presenting these ideas. And when you are saying that Buddhist philosophy, in Buddhist philosophy there is no acceptance of creator God. Even in Jain also there is no acceptance of creator God. In Mimamsa also, Mimamsakas do not believe in the existence of any creator God. Only this Nyaya philosophy, and in the beginning also, in Nyaya philosophy also, it was not a point of clear indication whether there is a belief of God or not. There are only 3 sutras in Nyaya Sutras where there is a discussion regarding God. Ishvara Karanam Purusha Karma Phalya Darshanat. Here also you can see that there is no creator God. Even in that situation, this sutra says that Ishwar is the cause, because many times the efforts of human beings are fruitless. So when God is there to support, then the efforts are fruitful. And when there is no God to support, when God is not willing to support, the efforts are not fruitful. So here the creator God is not at the center. And you can see that in Indian tradition, these indicate actually openness of our thoughts. And in the Rigvedic text which you quoted, Nasadiya Sukta, that is very beautiful. And it says that whether the creator knows the creator or not. So that is also beautiful. So, and this also should be noted, that Vedas are not seen or created by one person. These are seen by various different rishis, so many rishis. Vamadev is there, and so many other rishis are there, Vishwamitra, Vasishtha, etc. So many rishis are there. So, there is no one person. Therefore, there are different interpretations, different things are available. And to quote one sloka, Munde Munde Matir Bhrna. Every mind is different. So if every mind is different, so there are different interpretations, different ideas. And there is no something like that stress that one idea should only be accepted. Other ideas should be rejected completely, and those should be punished, and those things should be rejected completely. That is not the case. And I do not find any kind of difficulty seeing these three ideas. And actually, there are not only three, but there are so many, because God is not at the center of this discourse.
I think you have one
Yeah.
question, right? Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, please.
I'm asking this as a layman and not as a student of philosophy. So actually my question is that what are these rules about which you talked about, which one has to bear in mind while reading a text and trying to understand or interpret it, that is the said text. So what are these rules which you talked about?
Actually, I have spoken the shloka, Upakramopasanghara purvata phalam, Arthavadopapatti cha lingam tatpare nirnaya, but I didn't explain it because it would take a little bit more time. That means when you are trying to understand a text, in brief, I explain now, one must be very careful what is the beginning and what is the end. And these two should be taken together. Upakramopasanghara. These two make one. These two are not different, but one has to take what is the beginning and what is the end. And one should also be very curious what things are repeated so many times. Abhyasa. And what is the novelty, apurvata. And what is said that it is fruitful, phalam. And arthavad, something said that it is meaningful for this purpose, Arthavad is actually a very peculiar term and it needs a proper explanation. And upapatti, what it is conveying, whether it is acceptable or not. Logically, whether it is acceptable or not. We cannot accept any text if it is not logically acceptable. So logically, that should be acceptable, defendable. Then only we can accept. So these are those rules.
So this is really quite...
Just a story like Ramayana or Mahabharata, like it's a story, so it is flowing, it had its own journey by default. So how can we say that it has to be logical?
Story is also logical. If stories are not logical, you will not entertain that. You will not enjoy that story. And the logic of a story is something different. But stories are also logical. So that should be understood. If you are thinking that in a day-to-day life, as there is a logical, those are logical. For example, it might appear completely illogical to talk about a person having 10 heads. Isn't it? Because it is said that Ramana had 10 heads. So it appears to be completely illogical. Dashanana. But this is the logic of a story. When you see, just see these 2 points. The names many times give very good understanding. It is said Ram was son of Dasharath. And there is one thing common between Dasharath and Dashanan. 10. Dasharath is 10. There is also 10. Dash. And in Dashanan also 10. Isn't it? And this is you can see that if you have controlled your 10 indriyas, 10 senses, there is Ram in you. And if you have not controlled your 10 senses, rather you exemplified them, then Raman is in you. So this is also a kind of understanding, and one has to understand that meaning also. In a simple way, if you are going to understand a story, it will not make a sense. Because logic of a story is something different. But stories are not illogical completely.
So we have to delve deeper into this.
Yes.
To get the complete meaning.
Yes.
That's quite wonderful, I think. That leaves you with a
one
wonderful
question
thought.
also she was
One
asking.
last question now.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask the question. So my question relates to the objectivity in language. Say, for instance, when we deal with subject like mathematics, the numbers all across the globe will have an objective meaning. Even the symbols will have an objective meaning. They are not subject to interpretation. When somebody writes a poetry, they write with an objective mind. It's the reader who gives the color to it. And given that the Mahavakyas, the Mahakavya should be read within the frame of those 6 rules, so how is it that a reader gets that objective frame of mind, that it reaches towards the frame of mind with which the writer has had written during that point of time? जैसे हिंदी में कहते हैं देश काल परिस्थिति, उस देश काल परिस्थिति तक अपनी मनस्थिति को हम कैसे ट्रांसपोर्ट करें कि हम वही चीज़ उसी तरह से समझ सकें और वो जो इंटरप्रिटेशन है वो ना उसके लिए फुल स्टॉप लग जाए.
देखिए, ये जो आपने सवाल किया कि मैथमेटिक्स जो है ऑब्जेक्टिव, पहला प्रश्न तो इसी पर उठता है कि मैथमेटिक्स सचमुच ऑब्जेक्टिव है. क्योंकि आप बोलते हो 2 + 2 = 4, लेकिन 2 शेर को 2 बकरियों के साथ जोड़ दीजिए, कितने बचेंगे? या 2 बूंद पानी को जोड़ दीजिए, कितने बचेंगे? कभी भी 2 बूंद पानी जोड़ने पर 2 बूंद बचता है, 1 हो जाता है. तो अब ये ऑब्जेक्टिव कहाँ है? तो वही मैं कह रहा हूँ कि जब हम ये बात कर रहे हैं ऑब्जेक्टिव के बारे में, तो हमको ये भी देखना पड़ेगा कि ये ऑब्जेक्टिव का क्या मतलब है. व्हाट वी ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड फ्रॉम दिस वर्ड ऑब्जेक्टिव. बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. अब आपने एकदम सही एग्जांपल लिया कि ये जब हम बाह्य जगत के बारे में किसी के बारे में बात करते हैं तो ऑब्जेक्टिव है. लेकिन अब यहाँ पर कविता के बारे में बात की जा रही है, तो कविता तो भावनाओं के बारे में है, वो बाह्य जगत के बारे में उस तरह से नहीं कही जा रही है, ली नहीं जा रही है. तो अब ये तो अपने आप में चैलेंज है ही है कि कविता जो है, जो कविता जिस अभिप्राय से कही गई थी उसी अभिप्राय से समझी जा रही है कि नहीं, ये तो अपने आप में चैलेंज है. बहुत सारे इस तरीके की किताबें मिल जाती हैं आपको जिनके बारे में, अब जैसे जॉर्ज ऑरवेल की एक किताब है द एनिमल फॉर्म, आप लोगों में से बहुत सारे लोगों ने पढ़ा होगा. अब वो जॉर्ज ऑरवेल की किताब है द एनिमल फॉर्म, जो जिस रूप में वो चीज़ें के बारे में बता रही है, क्या उसी चीज़ के लिए आप अभी भी समझते हो, या उसका एक ऐसा पार्ट भी होता है जो उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट से अलग हो जाता है, जिस संदर्भ में वो लिखा गया. और कविता, वही कविता चिरजीवी होती है जो अपने उस फॉर्म को छोड़ करके भी अपनी मीनिंग को रखती है. नहीं तो केवल अगर उसी एक मीनिंग को रहेगी और वही एक मीनिंग रहेगा तो कविता का सौंदर्य खत्म हो जाएगा. पंडित राज जगन्नाथ ने एक जगह पर लिखा है कि रमणीयार्थ प्रतिपादक शब्द है काव्यम. काव्य वो है जो रमणीय अर्थ का प्रतिपादक हो. रमणीयता क्या है उसके बारे में बताया कि लोकोत्तर आह्लाद जनक गोचरता, लोकोत्तर आह्लाद जनक गोचरता, और वो क्षणे क्षणे नवतामुपैति, जिसमें बार बार नवीनता का आभास हो. अच्छी पोएट्री को आप 10 बार भी पढ़ते हैं तो भी उससे मन नहीं भरता, क्योंकि 10 बार भी पढ़ने पर उसमें एक अलग किस्म का आनंद आता है. वो नवीनता, अगर वो नवीनता नहीं रह जाएगी तो इसका मतलब आप वही चीज़ बार बार समझोगे, फिर वो मज़ा नहीं आएगा. तो नवीनता जो आना है वो उस परिस्थिति से आ रहा है. और इसी वजह से तो ना हम कविता ऐसी सुन रहे हैं जिसमें कि करुण रस की है, आँख से आंसू निकल रहे हैं, फिर भी मज़ा आ रहा है. तो ये जो मज़ा आ रहा है वो लिखने वाले ने जो लिखा और जो समझने वाले ने समझा, उसके बीच में एक अंतर तो है और रहेगा और होना पड़ेगा. और ये मतलब आप ये जो आपने ऑब्जेक्टिव एग्जाम्पल दिया ना, ईंट गारा पत्थर वगैरह का, तो जो इंजीनियर है उसने लिख दिया कि 1 मीट्रिक टन जो है बालू चाहिए, 1 इतना ईंट चाहिए, तो उसी तरीके से अगर नहीं लाएगा तो फिर मकान नहीं बनेगा. लेकिन कविता के क्षेत्र में ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. अगर कविता के क्षेत्र में वो करने लगेंगे तो कविता रह ही नहीं जाएगी।
Sadly, we have to come to an end because it's the Habitat's directive of Geeta ji. So I'm going to ask Abhilasha.
As we approach the conclusion of today's program, a formal vote of thanks will be delivered by Sangeeta Gupta ma'am, expressing our collective gratitude to all dignitaries, organizers and attendees who have contributed to the success of this inaugural session. Thank you all once again for being here today. We look forward to your continued participation and engagement throughout the year-long journey of this study circle.
Thank you, Abhilasha. On behalf of the Bharat Bodh Kendra, Habitat Library and Research Center, India Habitat Center, and ICPR, it's my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks for the inaugural session of the IHC ICPR Study Circle Lecture Series. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable Chief Guest and today's speaker, Professor Sachchidanand Mishra, Member Secretary ICPR, for accepting our invitation and for enriching today's program with his esteemed presence and valuable insights. We were honored that Professor Shrinivasa Varakhedi, Vice-Chancellor, Central Sanskrit University, had kindly consented to be here today. However, due to an unavoidable family health matter, he was unable to join us today. We convey our best wishes to him and his family. A special thank to the convener of today's program, Professor Bindu Puri, Center for Philosophy, Jawaharlal Nehru University, for her academic vision and coordination in making this event a success, and her thought-provoking lecture today. We gratefully acknowledge the Indian Council of Philosophical Research for their support, without which this lecture series would not have been possible. We extend our sincere thanks to the leadership of the India Habitat Center, our respected director, Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, for his constant guidance, encouragement, and support. The CEO, Mr. Sandeep Tandon, Habitat World, and the Habitat Program Division for their continued support in strengthening intellectual and cultural initiatives at ISC. We also gratefully acknowledge support of Shri Sandeep Tandon Kapoor, Deputy Director, and the entire administrative and finance team for ensuring smooth execution behind the scenes. Mr. Amarnath, Senior General Manager, and his team for the support provided by him. Our appreciation to the video and photography team, the technical and sound team, and every member of the Habitat staff who contributed to seamless conduct of today's event. Most importantly, our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed audience, scholars, members, students, and well-wishers, whose presence adds meaning, warmth, and purpose to initiatives like this. Thank you once again for joining us this evening. We look forward to your participation in the upcoming sessions of the ISC ICPR Circle Lecture Series. Dhanyavad. Thank you.